Hello and welcome to Security in Context. I'm Anita Fuentes, and today I am joined by Danish Mustafa, Professor of Critical Geography at King's College London. Professor Mustafa is a leading expert on water politics, climate vulnerability in South Asia, with extensive experience advising governments and international organizations. And today we are discussing the recent 4 day conflict between India and Pakistan in early May, which was the most serious military escalation between the two nuclear armed rivals in decades, and some of the deeper environmental and geopolitical tensions that it has brought to the surface. So, Danish, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, to start, I wanted to ask you if you could briefly walk us through the recent conflict between India and Pakistan. So, what triggered it? What stood out militarily? And how does it compare to past crises between the two countries?
I think it was triggered by a most unfortunate, dastardly, and criminal attack on these tourists in Pahalgam area of Kashmir, where some murderers and terrorists essentially murdered about 26 tourists in front of their partners, women partners. Within a day, India said that Pakistan has done it without any evidence or anything like that. And Pakistan said, well, let's have an independent inquiry. You got to walk us through the chain of evidence before we say, okay, was someone from our side involved? What's going on? But India said, no, 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 no. It is you who did it, and therefore there's going to be hell to pay for it. And they had repeated a similar sort of a thing in 2009 when there was an attack, a militant attack on military barracks in Uri region of Kashmir, and that's when they launched some missiles into Pakistani territory. And subsequently, there was an air war where they lost an airplane and a pilot who was taken prisoner by Pakistan. The remarkable thing, without getting into a partisan, it's their fault or their fault, I think the details are fairly well known to people. But the important thing to note here is that Pakistan has been a non status quo power in South Asia, if you sort of look at it. Pakistan has said, Kashmir is the unfinished business of partition, and we would like to have a plebiscite as per the UN resolution in 1948. They fought a brief war over it, they fought three wars over it. And India wants the status quo of Kashmir to change. No, sorry, Pakistan wants the status quo of Kashmir to change. Whereas India does not want it to change. India is perfectly happy with saying, well, okay, we are ready to put this under and make it international borders or what have you. So the interesting thing is that the Modi government, for the first time, has taken more of an aggressive stance, which traditionally was what Pakistan was doing in the past with regard to Kashmir. Pakistan has had so many problems with its economic growth, in terms of law and order, in terms of problems with the federation and what have you, that India has become a wee bit of a second thought for the people of Pakistan, if you will. But remarkable thing is, just when Pakistan starts losing interest, India starts perks up and wants to take interest in what's going on in Pakistan. And this terrorist attacks and the subsequent retaliation by India was a part of it. Now, the interesting thing is that if you want to go with a boxing analogy, Pakistan is a power that can fight 5 rounds with India. Just because its economy is 1/8 of India, its population is 1/8 of India, if you will. And India can fight 15 rounds, right? Economically, it can do that. So therefore, Pakistan, knowing that it can only fight 5 rounds, it wants to launch a knockout punch within the first 5 rounds, right? That's what it has always strategically tried to plan for and do it like that. Now, the thing is, does India have the political will and political capital to run a long war of attrition for 15 rounds of boxing? The answer is not clear. The answer is not unequivocal that yes, it does. I don't think it does because it's a very vast, diverse country. But the interesting thing is that something that Pakistan has been training for, planning for, thinking about a short, intense conflict is precisely what India wants to give to Pakistan, right? Exactly the thing that it has been training for, hoping for, its strong suit, right? India's strong suit is a longer war. Pakistan's strong suit is a shorter, intense war. And India repeatedly wants to play the game by Pakistan's rules. And there's the problem for India.
So, before the military escalation began, India also took a series of diplomatic and economic steps to signal that anger over the April 22nd attack. And most notably, on April 23rd, it placed the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. And the following day, Pakistan declared that any attempt to divert water would be considered an act of war. So, for those unfamiliar with the treaty, could you explain what it is and why it carries such symbolic and strategic weight in the relations between India and Pakistan?
I think there's a long history of it, and my view on it is a little unconventional, which is part of the reason why you're talking to me, I suppose. The thing is that in 1948, when Pakistan and India separated, on April 1st, 1948, India stopped the flows in a couple of canals, where the headworks were in India and the command area of the canal, the territory that it irrigated was in Pakistan. So that freaked out the Pakistanis that, oh my God, we are a low riparian and India can presumably stop the flows of water to us. Subsequently, there was World Bank mediated negotiations between the two countries, and eventually in 1960 they signed the treaty, Indus Waters Treaty, whereby in the Indus River Basin there are six major rivers, which is Indus, Ravi, Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Satluj, and Beas. Right now, the three eastern rivers, Ravi, Satluj, and Beas, basically run through the Indian states of Punjab and Haryana, where hundreds of thousands of hectares of land has been historically irrigated by those rivers, right? So India said that we want 100% of it. That was their starting negotiation position. And we want about 7% or thereabouts of the three western rivers. The World Bank dangled a very lovely carrot of about $850 million worth of investment in Pakistan, out of which India was also going to pay for some of it. $850 million back in 1960 amounts to about $24 billion in today's parlance. So that's a very substantial amount of money. So even though over the objections of the technocrats and the political parties and everyone else, the military government of Ayub Khan in 1960 said, well, we'd be getting wonderful technical assistance, investment, we'll build infrastructure, link canals, dams, and everything else. And that is worth giving up our rights to water of the three eastern rivers, which we are entitled to under international law, which is about equitable apportionment of waters between the two. So the first time they undertook a partition of the two waters. The treaty essentially lasted till until recently. It is very, very disturbing that India is making the kind of sounds that it is making. Because bear in mind, when states don't like each other in international affairs, they say, your government is something we don't like, but we're not enemy of the people, right? When US wants to invade Iraq, it doesn't say we want to kill Iraqis and eliminate them, right? It says, no, we are against Saddam Hussein. He's oppressing his own people. We want that state to disappear, right? And that would be, or if it's Gaddafi or if it's someone else, it's always state versus state. States almost never say that we want to fight a war of elimination against the people of another state, right? You never say that. Last time a country did that was Nazi Germany, right, against Russia, where it was not a pretense that we hate communism and we don't like Stalin. We're like, we're going to eliminate the Russians, right? Today, when Israel is fighting against the Palestinians, it is no longer about, oh, we want to fight Hamas. It is about physical elimination of the Palestinians. We don't want Palestinians to exist. We want them to move out. So these are very exceptional circumstances. And the remarkable thing is that Mr. Modi is saying, we want to stop water, which is essentially changing the conflict, interstate conflict, into an existential conflict vis-a-vis the people of Pakistan. Whether they can do it or not is a separate matter. But it is highly irresponsible for a nation state to say to another nation state that it's not just the state we don't like, that we have a conflict with. We want to eliminate the people. We want to hurt the people. And states do that, but they never admit to it. They never declare it.
So, in a recent article that you wrote in Hamal, South Asian, you described this Indus Water Treaty not as a lifeline, but as a tragedy for the people and the ecology. So, can you walk us through the argument and whether you think this moment of suspension also creates any real opening to rethink the treaty's terms?
Well, my view is that Pakistan and India are both locked into a 19th century paradigm of water management, which is basically predicated upon engineering intervention, diversion of water, surface irrigation, and so on, right? And cash crop production. I think that paradigm has been discredited over the past 50, 60 years. And it is time that India and Pakistan joined up with the changes in technology, where a lot more water is essentially extracted from groundwater than some surface water. There was practically no significant surface water, groundwater extraction back in the 1950s because the technology and the electricity was not there. So times have changed, crop mixes have changed, and people's expectations, particularly when you have a democratic society, people's expectations with their water have changed. It's not just about building canals, it is also what people want to extract leisure, recreation, spirituality, livelihoods of the fisher communities that live in these waters. And we also understand the impact of this sort of water development of diversion on the ecology of the rivers. We see that the Indus River Delta is a disaster. It's an ecological disaster, it's a human disaster, right? And Indus Waters Treaty and the kind of thinking that it represents of damming, diversion, irrigationalism, etc., is the enemy in this particular context. I think that the whole paradigm needs to be thrown out. I think there needs to be a much more wider democratic debate between India and Pakistan, including the workers and the people and the poor people, to see, well, what are the set of range of values that people want to realize from it, right? And how do we make sure that there's an equitable distribution of the benefits of these rivers to everyone, upstream, downstream, rich, poor, women, and so on. And I think that requires a kind of an imagination that unfortunately neither India nor Pakistan has given any evidence that they're willing to go in that direction. They're still stuck in the 19th century.
Something that I also found interesting in that piece, you make a point about how Pakistan's fear of India cutting off river flows is based more on paranoia than on geographic or hydrological reality. So, why do you think that fear has persisted for so long, and what have been the consequences of it, and why do you think so?
Anita, I'm stumped. You see, I'm not saying anything brilliant. I'm not saying anything bizarre. Anyone with a basic understanding of anyone who's looked at an atlas can read the contour lines and what have you. Uh, Basic map literacy, seventh, eighth grade person can tell you, guys, these three rivers, the three western rivers, pass through high mountains, deep gorges. You can't irrigate anywhere there. There is no land to irrigate, right? So that's just I don't get it. And then the second thing is that diversion. Where are you going to divert it to, right? It's a very highly seismically active area. How will you cut across the entire drainage of Kashmir to take it to Punjab? And why would you spend billions upon billions of dollars when again 90% of your water, irrigation water in Punjab is coming from groundwater? So what are you going to do with the surface water? You see? So I am as mystified as perhaps you are, because I think that when you read the paper, you're like, that kind of makes sense. I suppose. I hope you said that. Like, then why is everyone freaking out then? I mean, I'm happy to be proven wrong. I'm happy someone says, oh, no, 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 there's this technology, there's that. Happy to be wrong. You learn something. But so far, I haven't heard anyone say that. That you will irrigate mountains. How? What difference will it make?
Right. And zooming out a little bit, what do you think this crisis reveals about the broader balance of power between India and Pakistan today, both diplomatically and economically and also environmentally? And now that both countries have declared the crisis over, how do you assess the post conflict landscape? What's going to happen?
Uh, the cynic in me says that this was initiated by Mr. Modi to get some mileage in domestic politics. Now, as long as he gets that mileage, he'll come back and do it again later on if he's ever threatened in any sort of state elections or what have you. That's the cynic in me saying. I think that some major shortcomings of the Indian Air Force and armed forces have been demonstrated in this particular instance, and maybe there'd be much more sober heads in India prevailing and saying, maybe we don't want to do adventurism going forward over here because it's too expensive. What I'm afraid of is the Pakistanis may be overestimating their own competence and ability to prevail against India in this particular context, which is not a good idea, which is not a good idea for the Pakistanis either. I think a a lot of Indian observers are saying that unfortunately, something that India has absolutely abhorred was any notion of a parity between India and Pakistan or hyphenation between the two. But turns out that that is in fact what has happened. You're talking to me in the context of India and Pakistan, not talking to me saying, oh yeah, US and Canada. You don't talk about US and Canada as a security rivals, if you will, right? Because the power differential is so great. That's what India wanted. And turns out that that's a particular strategic error that they have made, where the whole world is talking about India and Pakistan as regional equals engaged in diplomatic and military maneuvering, if you will. So going forward, what will happen? I think that this circumstance might have been sobering for the Indians. I think that it may also be a little inebriating for the Pakistanis, and that scares me. The Pakistanis scare me. That if they feel at some point, oh, China's got our back and we can engage in some sort of adventurism, that would be a very bad mistake. That would be a catastrophe for the Pakistani people. It's a very poor country, bear in mind. It has some of the highest levels of child malnutrition in the world. It has some of the highest numbers of children who are out of school. It has a lot of developmental problems. And some Pakistanis might be proud of, oh, look at our military, look at what they did. I find that very worrying. I find that very worrying. I'd like to I'd like the country to focus on something else instead of stealth bombers and long range rockets and what have you.
Right. And is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up? Maybe to end on a more positive note, or I don't know, anything else about perhaps the involvement of other states in the conflict, whatever comes to mind.
I think that I am very encouraged to hear the Pakistanis making noises to the effect that let's talk. India is saying we don't want to talk. Right? Mr. Modi has unequivocally said we are not talking. But they are talking behind the scenes. And things don't remain the same in domestic politics or international politics. I'm hoping that going forward, after this interlude, maybe within India, hopefully Mr. Modi will not be able to get the political mileage that he was hoping to get with his adventurism. And maybe there will be a change in political environment allowing the two countries to start talking. And there are some major issues between the two, right? All it requires is sympathy, imagination, and a desire to solve the problem. And at the moment, Mr. Modi has given no indication that he has any desire to solve the problem. But he's a human being. India will be around and Pakistan will be around, and Mr. Modi and Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, they'll be long gone. So I'm just hoping that a new generation, a different political leadership will take advantage of the opening, presumably, that has happened over here. Where I think it is clear that there is no military solution between the two. There is no way you can have a military solution. The idea across the world was that India has such an overwhelming strategic advantage that there could be a military solution in terms of total and utter defeat of Pakistan. Now we know that that's not possible. And if you know that there is no political solution, then there can only be a political solution.
Well, Professor Danish Mustafa, thank you again for joining us, even when you're sick, and for helping us understand, the deeper political and ecological stakes behind this latest India-Pakistan crisis. And this has been Security in Context. So if you enjoyed the discussion, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also to follow us on X, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
I shall do that. Thank you so much for having me.